Thank you for your patience and cooperation. Boarding will begin in a few moments.
Hello YouTube and welcome, Phriq here, and I've got another flight for you in my Let's Play Flight Simulator X FSPassengers video series. In this flight, we are going to be going from KCMX, or Houghton County Memorial Airport in Houghton, Michigan, flying pretty much straight south to Packertown, USA, as we're landing at KGRB, or Atraubel International Airport in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Now, I have to admit, I'm pretty excited for this flight, or more so for this flight to be over, because once we get to Green Bay, I'm finally taking the plunge, and I'm selling and getting rid of this default Cessna 172, and I am purchasing a new aircraft for this video series. I'm probably going to be going with one of the aircraft by Coronado. However, I'm not sure exactly which one I am going to choose, yet that is something to look forward to in my next video. But without me ranting on about anything else, let's go ahead and start this airplane and go into the checklist. As always, if you want to follow along with me in the checklist that I am using, I do have a link to that checklist in the description box below, so feel free to follow along. Without further ado, pre-start checklist. So parking brake is set, and we can see it down here, and we can see that the lever is pulled out. Throttle is closed. Magneto starter switch will come down to the panel, and we'll see that that is off. Battery and alternator master switches are off. Avionics are off. Fuel pump switch is off, and mixture fuel flow we can see is in the cutoff position. So next we're going to turn on our master switches. And then we're going to turn on our panel light if we wanted to, but I'm going to actually keep that off. Flight controls are free and correct, and we don't have a control lock on. Flaps are all the way up. Fuel quantity, we can see that it is not quite full. It's actually only at about 30%, so we'll be topping that off in FSPassengers. Fuel selector valve is at both. Avionics switch will come down here and turn that on, and we can see our avionics panel light up. Check weather and request clearance. We're going to be doing that in a second once we start boarding our passengers. Transponder, I cannot turn the knob to standby, but it is squawking 1200, and my beacon, as always, which you can see down here, is on. So my pre-start checklist is complete. So the next thing I could do is go into my startup checklist, but before I do that, I'm going to go into FSPassengers and start a flight. So I'm going to start a flight. There are 2 passengers ready and willing to fly with me. Gonna add those 2 passengers, and we see that one of them is 165 pounds and one is 213. That is fine. Cargo, we're gonna crank this up because we want to earn as much money from the cargo as we can. However, to keep things realistic, I'm only going to do 120 pounds of cargo, as that is what the max capacity is for cargo in a Cessna 172. So I'm not going to exceed that because I don't want to be that guy. Next, I am going to add a little more fuel. The passengers are add a little more weight because we do have that 200-pound passenger instead of a bunch of light people, which is fine. So we're only going to do 70% fuel, and that puts our aircraft current load to 100%, which is fine with me. 70% of fuel should be enough to get us to 170 miles to Green Bay, Wisconsin. Going to look at the advanced fuel, just make sure it's even in both wings, which it is. Next, I'm going to set my destination. So I'm going to go down here to my ICAO code and type in KGRB, which we can see is Atraubel International Airport in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I'll hit
Destination
OK.
set.
Going to visit a bunch of Packer cheeseheads. You're probably going to hear me make a lot of jokes about the Packers. I am not a Packers fan. They're actually my sworn enemy, as I am a Minnesota Vikings fan. So let the hate mail and all the making fun of me come, because yes, I'm a Vikings fan and they are terrible. So yes, I'll try to make fun of the Packers, but I understand that I'm probably going to get made fun of twice as much just because the Vikings are terrible. Anyway, I set my type as normal. Everything else is looking good, so I'm going to go ahead and do OK real-time load. It's going to take 2 minutes, and Shift-E to open the door. None of this really ever changes. As you can see, the center of gravity is now 11% instead of 14%, which it was last time. The speeds are pretty much the same, weight slightly different, so I'm not too worried about that. So I'm going to hit start flight. Next thing I'm going to do is hit Shift-E to open my door and move the FS passenger window up to the top right. So there's 2 minutes left with that. I'm going to go right away into the startup checklist then. Engine and propeller area clear. All clear, all clear. Throttle, I'm going to crack that about 1/4 of an inch. Mixture is going to full rich, and my magneto starter switch is going to go into the on position after I turn on my fuel pump. There we go. We can hear that the engine turned on. I'm turning off my fuel pump right away. Next thing we can do is we can look at our annunciator lights, which we don't have any on at the moment. I'm going to pull my throttle back to idle. You might see the oil pressure annunciator light come on, but that is normal. Also, my engine instruments, ammeter, oil pressure, we're going to check those to just make sure everything is in the green, and we see that we are getting a positive charge in the ammeter. So everything is working. Startup checklist is complete. I can then go into the before taxi checklist. I'm going to come down here and turn on my nav light and my taxi light. Heading and indicator and altimeter. I'm going to be setting my altimeter in just a second once I get my ASOS information. First, what I'm going to do is turn my heading indicator. What I want it at is a heading of 171, which is going to be my initial heading to get to the Iron Mountain VOR, which is going to be our first VOR intersection that I am going to be taking. So 171 degrees. We are going to be doing VOR navigation, and because of that, I'm going to go into my frequencies and get them all set. 122.7 is the CTAF frequency for Houghton Houghton County Memorial Airport. It is a CTAF frequency because it is a non-towered frequency, thus there is no ground frequency or tower frequency, so we use a common traffic advisory frequency. Next, I'm going to turn to 125.67, which is going to be the ASOS frequency for Houghton County. And basically that is going to provide me with my weather and other information like that. It is similar to a ATIS information, so 125.67. Then I'm going to set up my nav frequencies. 112.8 is the frequency for the Houghton VOR. So the VOR I'm going to be connecting to is going to be up here. And I'm going to switch that to 111.2. And that is going to be that Iron Mountain VOR, which we said we're going to intersect first. Then in my standby down here in nav 2, I'm going to turn that to 115.5. And that's going to be the Green Bay VOR. And finally, for my standby in nav 1, I'm going to turn that to 109.9, and that's going to be the ILS information for runway 36 at Green Bay. Now, if I don't land at runway 36, if I land at runway 6, I'll switch that to 109.5, which is the ILS for that runway. However, I am not going to be doing an ILS landing. That is for reference only, as this is a VFR flight. With those set, I am going to quick turn to my ASOS information and get my weather.
Kilo, Charlie, Mike, X-ray, automated weather observation, 2019er, Zulu. Wind, 185 at 5. Visibility greater than 20 miles. Sky condition clear below 12,000. Temperature, 30 Celsius. Dew point, 3 Celsius. Altimeter 3021 Kilo Charlie.
Alright, so we have our weather information. 3021 is set for the altimeter. I'm going to turn that off. Winds are 185 at 5, so I'm going to be taking off on runway 13 because that is the closest one to be going into the wind. We will have a slight crosswind, but the wind is only 5 knots, so at that heading it'll only be about a 3 knot or 2 knot crosswind, so pretty irrelevant. I'm not too worried about it. Also, our ceiling is at 12,000 feet, which we are definitely not going to be overflying, so I'm not worried about that as well. I'm also going to set up my autopilot. I'm going to turn that to 5,500 instead of 7,500. We're going to be flying a little lower for this flight, but it is still going to be a odd numbered altitude, so it's going to be like a 3,000 or a 5,000 or a 7,000 because we are somewhat in an easterly direction because our heading will be 171. So it is going to be a odd number altitude plus 500 to follow VFR cruising altitudes. With that, I think everything is set in my avionics panel. We got our weather, radios and avionics are set, altimeter is set, heading indicator is set, autopilot is set but off. So what we're going to do is request our taxi clearance, and we actually can't request taxi clearance because it is a CTAF frequency, so what we do is just announce our taxi. So I'm going to select a runway for takeoff, which is going to be runway 13, And I am using an airport diagram for this, so I'll quick bring that over so you can see what I am going to be doing. We are right here at the terminal right here, and we're going to be turning a full U-turn like this, and then come on to taxiway Alpha, which is here, and turn on to taxiway Charlie, which will take us all the way to runway 13. So it's going to be a relatively short and easy taxi. So that is what my intentions are for my taxi. Come back over here, and we're going to be departing to the south, but before I announce that, I'm going to announce my taxi.
Kilo Charlie Mike X-ray traffic Papa Hotel Quebec 907 is taxiing to runway 13.
Also, if you didn't notice, when I was checking my ASOS information, I did shut my main cabin door and put on the seatbelt sign for my passengers. Turned off my parking brake and given it some throttle, and whoa, before I do that, fail on my part. Did I turn on? Okay, I did turn on my nav and taxi lights. I did go through my before taxi checklist, I just wanted to make sure. So we're going through the taxi checklist where parking brake is released, and we're going to taxi to the assigned runway. Or the runway in this case that we did select. Here we can see is taxiway Alpha, which we're on, and then Charlie is going to be right along here, kind of going parallel with the runway that we are going to be taking. And I am going to start to turn left, and we'll be on taxiway Charlie now. While I'm doing my taxi, I'm kind of going through my taxi checklist. So brakes, you can see that they have been tested as I've been using some differential brakes, and brakes are working. Also, directional gyros, turn coordinators, and artificial horizons, we can see that those are functioning properly as well. So everything seems to be working fine with the aircraft as of right now. So my taxi checklist is pretty much complete, except I need to continue my taxi until I get to runway 13 for takeoff. You can see a road off into the distance. As I mentioned in my last flight, I do have a new scenery add-on that I'm using in coordination with Orbix, which I've been using all the time, but now I got UTX, which is Ultimate Terrain X, which adds some more roads and some more realism to your terrain, and it does work with Orbix, so I've been quite happy with it. It makes the terrain look a lot better. Time of day, we can see it's 16:30, so it's getting close to the evening. 16:30, if you're not familiar with military time, is roughly 4:23, as you can see, or 4:23. About to turn to 4:24 in the afternoon. Alright, we'll start our turn. We can see that we're on taxiway Charlie, and here is runway 13, which is a runway that we wanted to be on. So I'm going to get to the hold short line, pull back my throttle, go to idle, set my parking brake, and I'm going to do my before taxi checklist real quick. So parking brake is set, fuel quantity we can see it's about at 70%. Fuel selector valve is on both, throttle is idle, mixture is fully rich, alternator switch will verify that that is on, which we can see it is. Throttle, we're going to do our run up and turn that to about 1800 RPM, which you can see the tachometer raising right there because I gave it some throttle. Next, I'm going to check my magneto, so I'm going to bring down to my left magneto 1 notch, and you can see the RPM dropped about 50. And then we're going to put it back onto both, and we can see it raised again. So we know that our right magneto is working. Go to only the right magneto, so we'll test the left one. See a little dip in the tachometer, bring it back to both, and we should see it rise again. So we know both of them are working. Also looking at the ammeter, we can see that we are getting a positive charge, so our run-up is complete, and everything was functioning properly. Oil temperature, we checked that too, and all our other gauges, everything is in the green. Elevator trim, we're going to set that for takeoff, so I'm going to kind of scroll my trim wheel down, which I did right there. Flaps, we're going to set those for takeoff, and they're going to be at 10 degrees. Flight controls are still free and correct. Landing lights, we'll go ahead and turn those on. Taxi lights are coming off. Strobe lights are going on. Pitot heat, I am not turning that on because weather seems like a non-factor right now and there's no moisture in the air. Can't turn my transponder on, but it is still squawking 1200, and we're going to announce that we are going to be doing our takeoff and departing to the south.
Kilo Charlie Mike X-ray traffic Papa Hotel Quebec 907 taking off runway 13 departure to the south.
Alright, Alright, I'm not hearing any other traffic. I looked both ways and did not see any other traffic, so what I am doing is I'm going to taxi onto the active, which is going to be runway 13 for me. Start to turn. So apparently runway 13 has some VASI lights, it looks like, even though when I came into Houghton I was on runway 31 and it did not. But that is alright, we still landed just fine. Gonna slowly hit my brakes and we are going into our takeoff checklist. I'm not going to be verbalizing at all because there is a lot that happens at once, but I put in the throttle fully and we'll try to stay on the center line, even though our aircraft always wants to drift a little bit because of torque and P factor and things like that. 55 knots, we are looking good. That's our decision speed. 65 knots, we're getting ready for our rotate, and I am going to slowly pull back on the yoke and rotate, and we have liftoff. Right away I'll start trying to trim the aircraft a little. We got a positive climb rate going, and I'm going to pull up my flaps. Aircraft is really wanting to turn to the right now, so I'm kind of having to fight that. Want to stay on that runway heading as much as we can initially. Let's get a good climb rate going. Need to speed up slightly. Next, what I'm going to do is tune to Minneapolis Center on 127.2, which you can see I have that frequency in my COM 2, so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to request a flight follow.
Minneapolis Center, Papa Hotel, Quebec 907 is type Cessna type Skyhawk, 1 miles southeast of Kilo Charlie Mike X-ray, request flight following. Papa Hotel, Quebec 907, Minneapolis Center, squawk 3217.
3217.
Papa Hotel, Quebec 907, radar contact 2 miles southeast of Kilo Charlie Mike X-ray 1600, altimeter 3021.
I'll acknowledge that.
Papa Hotel, Quebec
3021. Also, if you didn't notice, I turned on my autopilot for heading hold, and I toggled on my altitude hold on and then off, so I'm manually controlling my altitude, but I do have a heading hold on because I do want to be on that 171 heading. Also, what I'm going to do is, we can see that we're on the 2 flag for our VOR, but what I'm going to change that to is switch this counterclockwise. We can see that it flipped to the from flag, and I'm going to turn this to about a 171 heading because we do want to get onto that VOR path. Or that VOR radial, excuse me, is the proper term, and we can see it is off to our right, so we're going to have to turn to intercept that. So I'm going to actually put myself at about a 185 heading right now, to where I can eventually intercept that VOR radial, and then I'll turn back to my 171 heading, where I should be able to fly straight on that. See all the ground below us. You can see Lake Superior off into the distance, which is a rather big lake. Nice view of the area right here. Nice river coming in here. You can see Lake Superior off on the other wing as well, just because we're kind of on a peninsula right now. We can also see that our radial is starting to deflect to the left, so we're getting closer to intercepting that. Once we intercept it, like I said, I will change my heading bug to be on that 171 radial. Climbing at 80 knots, make sure my flaps are up, which they are. We have about a climb rate of 500 feet. I'm going to start to lean my mixture. And you can hear that we got a little more power right there, and our climb rate hopefully will slightly increase. About 4.4 nautical miles away from the Houghton VOR, so it should be behind us as we have that from flag. Keep our positive climb rate going.
Minneapolis Center, orbit 5225 with orbit 5225.
Double check our gauges
Minneapolis
while we
Center,
wait for that
roger.
radial, and we can see that everything still is in the green, so everything should be functioning properly, and everything sounds normal with the aircraft as far as right now. Hopefully we don't run into any surprises. Pretty much on that radial now, so what I'm going to do is turn the aircraft to a 171 degree heading, and we'll stay on that 171 radial. If we see it start to deviate any to the left or the right because of the wind, we will then adjust our heading accordingly using a technique called bracketing. Also, we're running into some turbulence, and my passengers are getting scared of turbulence. Well, I'm sorry, passengers, I cannot control the turbulence. That's something that happens with aircraft. I say this speech all the time because you always get upset with the turbulence. And especially in a smaller general aviation aircraft like this, it's almost impossible to have a turbulent-free flight at these lower altitudes in these smaller aircraft which feel every bump in the air. But whatever. There goes my perfect 100% flight.
Contact Minneapolis Center on 133.65.
We still are climbing. I took a new drink that I got. Apparently there's a Mountain Dew Dew Shine, which is made with real sugar. It's non-alcoholic, as the bottle has to show. It's clear and it's in a glass bottle, and it's alright. I think I like original Mountain Dew better, but it's alright. It's a more unique flavor. So if you go to your local convenience store and you see Dew Shine, give it a try. I don't know. Still have about another 1,500 feet in our climb, and then we can start to level off. Take a look out our wings. We can see that we're pretty much flying over nothing but forest below us, with a few roads that lead to nowhere. There's a circular road here with no buildings, so that makes a lot of sense. You can see Lake Superior still off into the distance, and you can't even see the shoreline on the other side because it is that massive of a lake, being the largest freshwater lake in all of the world. You can still see some of the parts of Houghton and some of the farmland over there. Looking good in our climb. We got about another 1,000 feet to go. Also, you can see that we're drifting off of that radial, so we actually need to turn left to intercept it. So what I'm going to do is turn to about a 167 heading. We'll see if that starts to deflect that to the right. If it doesn't, I have to change that heading a little more. If it deflects it too much, then I know that I've overcompensated for any wind effects or aircraft effects that there might be, so I might have to adjust again, using again that technique of bracketing. If you want to learn more about bracketing, I do have a Let's Learn video on VOR navigation. It's episode 3, I believe, and it's about VOR navigation, and it does go over bracketing. So definitely, if you want to find out what I am doing with that technique, check out that video. Still climbing, but man, we're not going as fast as I would like on this climb. Mixture should be lean to about where it needs to be. We're at 80 knots, but we're just not getting the climb rate that I would like. But we will accept it, I guess. There's not much I can do about it. Look at the water below us. We will be traveling over some water right here. This is probably going to be the biggest section of water that we do travel over. There might be a lake or river here or there. Green Bay is on the bay of Lake Michigan. However, we shouldn't really have to cross any water there. But if we do, that's alright. I would much rather cross a giant lake where I am next to a big populated city as opposed to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where you can drive for 200 miles and not see a single person. I've driven through the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. It is a beautiful view, but I would recommend, if you are going to do it, especially on some of those smaller 2-lane highways, Don't do it at night because holy cow, I think I drove for about 3 hours when it was pitch dark and I saw at least about 100 deer on the roadway or on the side of the roadway, and we also saw one bear. So it is a fun flight, but it can be dangerous at night because there is a lot of wildlife up there if you ever drive through the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. As you can see, we're pretty much holding straight on that heading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my heading a little more to about a 160, and then I'm going to put it back to a 167. Hopefully that'll keep us on the 171 radial that we want to be on. I'm going to start to level out as well. Lower some power. We're getting closer to that 5,500 foot mark. And I'm going to turn on my altitude hold in just a second.
Joined at 133.55, Bombardier 905 Bravo.
And we will start to level off. Hopefully now we can start to increase our airspeed some as we're leveling off. Our VSI will dip and stay at 0, and then we'll start to trim for hopefully around 100 to 110 knot airspeed. Unfortunately, we do have a headwind with us, so that kind of stinks, but whatever. Will make us fly a little slower, but we should still be fine.
Traffic is 10 o'clock, 1 mile at flight level 323.
As you can see, my change in heading has also started to allow that radial to deflect back to the right. Once it deflects another notch or two, I am going to go back to that 167 heading and keep it there, and that should keep us on the 171 radial, compensating for any wind and aircraft deflections that may occur. 17 nautical miles away from Houghton. Not sure exactly how far it is to the Iron Mountain VOR. I'm guessing, looking at the map, it's probably about 80 miles. I'm going to turn this to 167. As you can see, I'm kind of doing my change in heading, and what we are going to do now is we're pretty much over that water that we were on. Otherwise, if we were to lose an engine, we are within glide distance of land. And we are flying straight and level at 5,500 feet at what you can see is about 100 knots. We're finally at our cruising altitude, so what I'm going to do is turn off my passenger seatbelt sign, because last time I got docked a lot of satisfaction points because I forgot to turn that off. And apparently they want to roam about the cabin, which is all of, you know, like 30 cubic feet. If you've ever been inside a Cessna 172, they are tiny. There is nowhere to move, but whatever, they can move about the cabin as they see fit. So I am cruising levels 5,500 feet at 100 knots, and what I'm going to do now is pause this video, and I will bring you back when we either get closer to that Iron Mountain VOR or if anything else changes. Alright guys, I am back. I actually only traveled about 3 miles since when I shut off the video, but as you can see, we connected to that Iron Mountain VOR, so I'm going to switch my DME to nav1, and it connected at about 60 nautical miles, so that VOR must also have a 60 nautical mile range, and was a little closer than I was expecting, so we have connected to that. So what I can do is drop my VOR for Houghton and turn to 115.5, which is going to be connecting to the Green Bay VOR, which it might have already connected to already. Holy cow. So it is already connected to that VOR. I'm not sure what the range is on the Green Bay VOR, but I'm assuming it is rather large. So what I might do is just adjust my heading to fly to that VOR instead, which you can see it's pretty much the exact same heading that I'm on. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to not do the Iron Mountain VOR. We're going to fly pretty much straight south, which we are. Just gonna change this to about a 175 maybe. Yeah, it's about a 175 degree heading, so I'm gonna turn this to a 175 and we'll see if that deviates at all. We're 131 nautical miles away from Green Bay, so it is about a 160 nautical mile trip. And we're still flying level at 5,500 feet. We're going at 100 knots. All the engine instruments are looking good. So what I'm going to do again is pause the video. And as always, I will bring you back if anything changes. Otherwise, I might bring you back before we get to Green Bay so you don't miss the entire flight. But yeah, I'll bring you back in a little bit. Alright everybody, I am back. As you can see, we are 49.2 nautical miles away, and that is from the Green Bay VOR. We haven't been using the Iron Mountain VOR, but if I were to tune to it up here, and then select nav 1, you can see that we're about 30 miles away from it. So what we could do is we could use that information from that VOR to kind of play a game of where are we at on our aeronautical chart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up that VOR, and as you can see, that's a from flag right there from the Iron Mountain VOR, and it's pointing pretty much south. We're basically from it on a bearing of 191 roughly. So what I'm going to do is I am going to bring over my aeronautical chart, and we're going to try to figure out where we are. So right here is that Iron Mountain VOR. Here you can see there is a 185 radial, and so we're on a bearing of about 190, and we're about 30 miles away from it. So what we can do is come down to our distance legend, and we see nautical miles, statute miles, and kilometers, and roughly about an inch, a little longer than an inch on the screen right now is 10 nautical miles. So we know about 30 nautical miles should be about 3 inches, or that distance right there. So what I'm going to do is go back to my aeronautical chart where I'm so lost right now. Okay, that's Houghton up there. So we went too far north. Here we go. Ironwood VOR. So what we're going to do is about 1 inch takes us to about here on that 190 heading. And you can see that's the heading, the radial that we're on, excuse me. And there's about 10 miles. So if we do that again, that's about 20 miles. And if we do that again, that's about 30 miles. So if we look outside, we should see one big lake that is pretty much east and west, and another lake, or two, I can't tell, that is north and south. And that's what we can use as a visual indicator to see if that is where we are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to our aircraft, I'm going to look out the window, and you can see that we are flying over a pretty much straight north and south lake. And if we look out the other way, we'll acknowledge it.
Papa Hotel, Quebec 907.
I'm just going to automatically do this one. Contact Minneapolis Center. Right.
Papa Hotel, Quebec 907.
But if we look out our aircraft, flip around, we can see that one long east and west lake and that long north and south lake. So we have visually figured out where we are on the map using our basically our DME, knowing how far we are from a VOR and the radial that we are on from that VOR as well. So kind of one of the fun things about VOR navigation is figuring out where you are in reference to a map or an aeronautical chart. Trying to find that big lake again. It's going to zoom in down there. It said there was a power plant down here on the aeronautical chart, and I was just going to see if the game was detailed enough to actually put one of those in, but I am not seeing one. It says it should be right down here, basically where this little city is, or a little town. There should be a power plant down there. I'm not seeing one, so you can't really use that for your VOR or your VFR flight and VFR navigation. However, you can see that there are some power lines coming along right there, and if we bring in our graph again, you can also see that there is a line of power lines right here. So that is actually accurate with the game, and you can use that for some of your VFR navigation as well. So some of the cool things about the game is, you know, how they have those power lines and railroads and roads and things like that. So you can do some VFR navigation. It's not the easiest because not all things are in place. It's a little better for me because I do have some of those extra scenery add-ons, which do put places a little more accurately than the default game has. But that's a fun little thing that you can do with your game in VFR Flight, VOR navigation, locate where you are in reference to an aeronautical chart. With that said, you can see that we are not going to be using that. We're still right on our bearing. We're connecting 115.5, which is that Green Bay VOR. I'm going to switch my DMA back to the Green Bay, and you can see that we're 38.1 nautical miles away from it now. We're still on that radial. We're heading almost directly straight south, still flying at 100 knots and 5,500 feet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video one more time, and I will bring you back when we are roughly 20 nautical miles away, and then I'm going to get ready to contact Green Bay, get approval into their airspace, land, do my approaches and everything like that. So I will see you guys in just a minute. Alright, you guys, I lied. I'm bringing you back one more time before my final bringing you back where we're going to do the approach. But I just got contacted by Minneapolis Center, so it's basically to contact Green Bay approach.
Contact Green Bay approach on 119.5.
And the nice thing about that is we know that we are getting towards our destination then. So that's another confirmation that we're getting closer to where we want to be, is because we are having to contact Green Bay approach. So I'm going to tune to 119.5, which you can see I have down here on my standby. So I'm going to switch that over and contact them.
Green Bay approach, Papa Hotel, Quebec 907, with you 5,500. Papa Hotel, Quebec 907, Green Bay approach, roger, altimeter 3021.
Altimeter is still the same of 3021. So I just wanted to bring you in, even though you always get transferred from one Minneapolis center to another center, or if you're in different parts of the U.S. from just one flight following center to another. But now that we're getting into Green Bay approach, we know that we are getting closer to Green Bay. So that's another indicator, aside from just using what we visually can see on the map or using our VOR navigation. That's another indicator that we are getting to our destination. So those are all tools that you can use to know in reference your location to where you are and where you should be and whatnot like that. Or whatnot. I can't talk at all today. Holy cow. It's early in the morning for me. I just woke up. So anyway, I will bring you back in a little bit when we're about another 10 miles closer to Green Bay and ready to start our approach. Alright guys, as you can see, we are 15 nautical miles away from that VOR. We are still on our southern radial of about 180. Off to the right wing, you can see that lake right there. And if I bring over Sky Vector, you can kind of see where we are. Here is that VOR that we are heading to. We're pretty much straight north of it, about 15 miles, which is here. So we can see that off the right wing right there is that lake that we are looking at. Pretty soon we're going to have to enter into the Class D airspace. For that, we are going to cancel our flight following with Green Bay approach and then contact the tower for Austin Atraubel International Airport. We'll look for this airport right here, which we can see is kind of right on the line of the Class D airspace. So that's when we know we're going to want to make our transition and contact into the tower, and then finally get our landing clearances and things like that. So what I'm going to do right now is, since we're getting close to that area, I am going to start slowing my aircraft down. I'm going to turn off my altitude hold and also start a slight descent. As you can see, I'm bleeding off some of that airspace right now. I'm not wanting to get too high of an angle of attack or anything like that. But I'm just going to try to trim out the aircraft for about 90 knots or so, maybe a little slower. For the approach, you usually want to, I'm going to try to establish 85 knots roughly. So pulling back a little more on that throttle. And as you can see, our airspeed rate here is starting to get a little lower. We're 12 nautical miles out. What I'm going to do is come to the wing right here and start looking around. We see this little city up here. I think that's where the airport's going to be that we're looking for. And we can kind of see it right there. So that is that airport that we are looking for. So we're a couple miles still out from where we're going to be doing that transition, but I'm still going to start slowly pulling back on my throttle a little more because I want to descend now that I got my 85 knot airspeed. Also looking at the airport diagram for Atraubel, you can see that the elevation is only about 600, almost 700 feet. So we're going to want to enter the pattern around 1,700 feet. So we do have a little ways to descend.
Small 043, contact Green Bay, approach on 120.2.
Zoom out again, just to see where we are. We're getting close to that area, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to contact, or I'm in contact with Green Bay Approach, but what I'm going to do is cancel my flight following if I don't step on people.
Green Bay Approach, Papa Hotel, Quebec 907, cancel flight following.
Papa Hotel, Quebec 907, Green Bay, approach, cancellation received, squawk 1200, frequency change approved.
And they're going to want me to do that squawk 1200, which I did. Next, what I'm going to do is I've already put in my frequencies here for 18, what are they? 118.7 is tower for Green Bay. Also, 121.9 is approach, and 124.1 is their Addons. So I'm going to contact the Addons quick.
Green Bay Airport information, Charlie 222, Niner Zulu, wind 184 at 5, visibility greater than 20 miles, sky condition, no clouds below 20,000, temperature 30, 2.3, altimeter 3021, ILS, runway 36 in use, landing and departing runway 36. VFR aircraft say direction of flight. All aircraft read back hold short instructions. Advise controller on initial contact you have Charlie.
Alright, so we've got airport information Charlie. So I'm going to contact Tower now and say that we have Charlie and that we want to land at their airport, which I believe is right over there. And I love it when FSX does random things with your airplane like that. So one of the frustrating things with FSX. I'm going to request a full stop landing.
Green Bay Tower, Papa Hotel, Quebec 907 is 12 miles north with Charlie to land.
Papa Hotel, Quebec 907, Green Bay Tower, entered left traffic, runway 36, altimeter 3020.
Alright, so we're going to enter left traffic.
Make left traffic, runway 36, Papa Hotel, Quebec 907.
3020. What is my plane doing? There we go. I'm gonna turn. We can see the airport right, I believe it's right over here. And what we're gonna want to do is enter left traffic, or it might be straight ahead of us. 1 second, real quick. Yeah, actually, I can see the airport straight ahead of us. So that is where we're gonna want to be heading. So we're pretty much on a good heading to enter left traffic. We're coming directly from the north. We're going to be landing at runway 36. So looking at my airport diagram of Atraubel, here's runway 36 right down here, and that's where we're going to enter. We're going to want to enter left traffic, which means we're going to be doing left-hand turns. So we're going to want to come on the right side and have that airport to our left. So we'll be coming down here and then doing left turns to go onto the base and to the final. Now when we enter it, usually when you enter the traffic pattern, you enter at a 45-degree angle and then enter the downwind and then go to your base and final. So what I'm going to do is actually turn a little more to the west so I can get out here and then start coming in like this instead of coming directly from and entering directly into the downwind from the back of it. So in order to do that, I am going to change our heading some to the west more. About a 2, I'm going to do like a 240. Just so I can get a little bit over, maybe not quite that far, maybe a 210, about right here. because I'm going to want to enter it on that left side. Also, you can see the city of Green Bay is all over here. You can see the Bay of Lake Michigan that Green Bay is on right here off the left wing. They say there's no clouds below 20,000, but it looks like there are some kind of relatively low. But they might be a little further away where they're a non-factor for us as of right now. Excuse me. Also, you can see we intercepted that glide slope, or the localizer. We're on 109.9, which is the ILS information for runway 36, which is going to be the runway that we're using. So that kind of works out. Just going to see where we are. As of right now, our altitude is about 3,500 feet. We want to continue to descend, and I'm going to turn off autopilot entirely now because I'm going to hand fly it and start getting ready to enter that traffic pattern. See one of the interstates here. I'm not sure what interstate that is. Lots of traffic. I love that new I've said it before, but I love that UTX mod because you can see all the traffic now that I have. I have cars on these roads and on these roads, not just the main highways and things like that. Even some of these secondary side roads and whatnot have traffic, which really makes your cities come to life and what you see on the ground come to life when you're flying. So I would recommend it in coordination with Orbix, which is the other scenery add-on that I'm using. Also, I forgot to mention that I did turn on my fasten seatbelt sign. We did start to run into a bunch of turbulence. As you can see, their satisfaction is now down to 94% because I ran into turbulence, I think, like 3 or 4 times, and their satisfaction keeps on dropping. They're not happy that I fly into turbulence, which, again, I have zero control over, but whatever, it is their right to complain, so I guess they are exercising that right. Still descending, we're at about 2,800 feet roughly, so I need to go down about another 1,200, which hopefully we'll be able to do before we get to the airport, which I'm starting to kind of turn into right now. Make sure that I'm at 3020, which you can see I am. Slow to about 80 knots. We're going to keep this airspeed, and then once we get to our beam point, we'll drop our first degree of flaps and begin to make our final approach into Austin Atraubel International Airport. Never flown to this airport in FSX, so this is the first time I've ever flown here. So it's kind of a new experience. I don't know the layout too well. I'm simply going off airport diagrams to kind of learn where I'm supposed to go and whatnot. So it's one of the beauties of airport diagrams and also aeronautical charts and stuff like that is even if you've never flown to that airport, you can still get a feel and an idea of what you're gonna see and expect. So I'd definitely recommend if you're ever flying both real life or in the sim and want to get a good understanding of where you're going, so you can go into an area kind of expecting a certain, or having expectations of what is going to happen. It's good to review those. You can kind of know the layout of an airport before you even get there, so that's how I knew where I had to enter the traffic pattern and everything before I could even see the airport really, is going off of those aeronautical charts and also my airport diagrams for when you get closer. Also, those airport diagrams prove invaluable once you start taxiing and things like that, because they do have all the taxiways listed. Starting to get my feet nice and comfortable on my rudder pedals because we are about to enter into the traffic pattern. Now I'm going to start turning in a little closer and head directly at it almost, where you can see I'm heading into it at almost that 45-degree angle. And we should perfectly be at our you know, about a 1,700 foot altitude once we enter this pattern. So the departure started at the correct time, or not the departure, but the descent, excuse me. I get my terms mixed up all the time. Maybe I have a aeronautical term dyslexia. I don't know. That's probably not a real thing. So I'm pretty much entering into the downwind right now. I'm giving it a little more power because I want to stay at my 1,700 foot altitude. Also, I'm starting to turn almost to a direct southerly heading, which will put me officially into that downwind. So we can see that on my heading indicator, I'm pretty much flying south. I'm going to look off to my left wing, and you can see that we are now flying parallel with the airport. And we're going to be doing left turns, so we are properly on our left traffic pattern. Getting close to that beam point, which is about where you want to land on the runway. Here's the keys, and about right here is going to be that beam point. So what I'm going to do now is enter my first detent of flaps.
Papa Hotel, Quebec 907, cleared to land, runway 36.
Alright, so we'll acknowledge our landing
to land,
clearance.
runway 36, Papa Hotel, Quebec 907.
Now when the end of the runway gets to about 3/4 of the way between our wings and our elevator back here, that's when we're going to want to turn into our base leg. You can see we did drop a little more altitude when we put in those flaps. We're starting to level out a little more now, and also you can see that some of that airspeed is bleeding off as we're going about 80 knots. I don't want to really descend any more though, so I'm going to give it a little more power. Descended more than I should. I'm going to try to give it a little power, trim it with a little bit of nose up so we can have a little bit of a slight climb, if not stay where we are. Look out to the left wing again. We can see that we're pretty much at that 3/4 area. So what I'm going to do is start turning into my base leg.
005, Mike is 11 miles southeast with Delta to land. Beach November 5005, Mike, Green Bay Tower, make right, face runway 36, altimeter 3020.
Also, now that we're entering the base, I am going to put in my second detent of flaps. Still some snow on the ground, but I don't think that would be there in real life. It's April 20th, and where I am is definitely colder than Green Bay, Wisconsin, despite what any Green Bay people might think. And I'm sure there's no snow there, because we don't have snow. Even though yesterday we did get some kind of snow flurries almost. It was not what you want to see in April, but whatever. We saw it. We can see that the localizer is starting to line up with our turn, so we're almost turning in perfectly with that runway. We are coming in a little high. I'm going to drop my last detent of flaps, bleed off a little more speed, and also pull back my throttle because we are high, so I want to descend. Also, you can see the PAPI lights right there, indicating that we are high, so we're going to keep this about 800 foot descent going, which is a little faster than we'd want to descend, but it should be good. Also, we got to bleed off some of that airspeed since we're almost at 75 knots, and we want to shoot for about a 65 knot landing. Now we're just slightly above the glide slope, which is good, so I'm going to start to add a little more power, and also lift the nose some, which is going to bleed some of that airspeed off. Trim the aircraft with a little bit of nose up, coming in a little low now, so I might need to give it a little more power. Really got to trim this thing up. Holy cow. Too much. There we go. Sorry to make these Learjets and other things have to wait for us. Here we're at about 60 knots that you can see. I'm going to start pulling back my throttle. Oh, lift it up a little too much. There we go. And we have landed in Green Bay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Green Bay. You are at Austin Atraubel International Airport. I'm going to slow down and get off on taxiway N4, I believe it said. We'll find out. N or M? It's taxiway M4.
Papa Hotel, Quebec 907. Contact ground on 121.9er.
Alright, so I'm going to contact ground on 121.9er. I'm going to acknowledge that.
Going to 121.9er, Papa Hotel, Quebec 907.
So 121.9er. I'm going to request taxi to gates.
Green Bay, round, Papa Hotel, Quebec 907. Taxi to the gate. Papa Hotel, Quebec 907. Taxi to gate, golf, free. Via taxiway, Mike 4, Mike, Juliet.
Mike 4, Mike Juliet. So I'm going to acknowledge that.
Taxiing to gate, golf, 3. Using taxiway, Mike 4, Mike, Juliet. Papa Hotel, Quebec 907.
Also, what I'm going to do is my taxi to ramp checklist. So strobe light is coming off. Flaps are going to get fully retracted right here. Taxi lights are coming on. Landing lights are coming off. And we're not going to want to taxi at more than 20 knots. Also, I'm going to take my takeoff trim to, or my trim to takeoff. And we're going to start taxiing to where we need to go. Before we do that, actually, I'm going to hit my parking brake and look at that airport diagram one more time. So we came off on M4, which is right here, and we need to take Mike to Juliet. So we're going to go along here, which is Mike. So we're on M4, and then we're going to turn left, cross runway 924, or 6 and 24, and then at this fork in the road, we're going to take the middle one, which is going to be taxiway Juliet, and that should take us straight into the terminal, where we're going to be parking at gate 3. So that is going to be our taxi. Going to take off parking brake, and we'll go ahead and start doing that. Relatively uneventful flight, which is nice. I still haven't had any emergencies or aircraft issues. I bought this brand new, so that might be part of the reason why the game hasn't done it, but it says it's supposed to be a 5% probability of a failure. So I guess that's what, one in every I don't know, 1 in every 20 chances or flights I might get a failure. That doesn't sound right. 5 out of 100, that's 5%. My math is failing today. Holy cow. I should start thinking before I talk. So if you guys are listening to me just saying shut up, put that in the comments, and I'll just shut up. I'll just fly. Because, man, I like to think that in some of my other flights I've talked about relatively useful things, but throughout this entire flight I've just felt off. I felt like I've talked about the most random, pointless stuff in the world, and that I've just rambled on about nothing, like I am doing right now. So here we are crossing that one runway. Brakes never came on quick enough, but as always, I'm going to hold short there. They're not going to give me clearance to cross, but I'm just going to double check that there are no aircraft coming. And we'll start to cross this runway. Here you can see is where we're going to enter that fork in the road. Juliet is off to the right. Otherwise, Delta is basically right here. So I'm going to turn slowly to the right and go straight then in the middle taxiway here, which is going to be Juliet.
Taxi to General Aviation Parking. Via taxiway Mike 4, Mike 2.
Now, I doubt in real life I'd probably go parking to a gate like this, but I do have passengers. I don't know what else I would do. I'm not sure where General Aviation Parking is in this airport. And also, I'm sure that the gates are not numbered, so I'm probably going to have to turn on Progressive Taxi to figure out what gate I need to park at. I'm going to zoom in just to see if I can see any numbers. No. We're going to turn on Progressive Taxi quick, because I would have had no idea what gate to go to, because that's the one thing the airport diagram does not show, are gate numbers. Alright, here we go. It's a nice little terminal that Green Bay has. I've never been to Green Bay, actually, so first time for everything. I've never been there in game or in real life. Getting close to our parking spot. Almost there. I'm going to start seeing that line. There we go. And I'm going to brake. So we have made it to our parking spot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit control period, which is the parking brakes, and go through our shutdown checklist. So parking brake is set, throttle is idle. Fuel pump, I never turned it on, so it is off. I'm going to come down here and turn off my avionics though. Also, taxi light is coming off, nav light is coming off. Pitot heat is already off. Mixture fuel flow is coming to the cutoff, and we'll hear our engine die. Magneto starter switch is going to go to the off position. Beacon, I am going to keep that on. Panel lighting, didn't have that on, so that's not going to go off. And I'm going to turn off my alternator and battery switches. Flaps are up. Fuel selector is at both. Technically what you would do is you would close one of the tanks when you're not using your aircraft, just so you can prevent fuel from cross flowing into the different tanks, because sometimes you can get moisture or condensation in from one tank to another and things like that. So I was always told that you close off the tanks by switching either to the left or right, so I'm going to do that actually, because I haven't been doing that in my videos. So I'm going to select the left tank. And also a lot of times what you do is you fill up your aircraft after you use it, so also that way you can't get moisture and stuff in there. The tanks are pretty much already full, but then again, I'm not going to be doing that. What I'm going to do now is hit Shift E to open up my main cabin door, and we can see that the passengers are deboarding the plane. Securing aircraft checklist is the last one that we can do. There's only 3 steps. Parking brake is verified set, and we can see that it is out. Also throttle, and we can see that it is verified idle by being pulled out all the way, and all switches off. So we can just cross-check all our switches down here and verify that they are all off, except for beacon, which, again, I always leave that on. Maybe your flight instructor might tell you to keep it off when you're not using it, but I always keep it on because it's not going to use any power or anything like that if it's on, and that way when I turn on my batteries, it automatically turns on, and that's my reasoning behind it. So my securing aircraft checklist is complete. I'm going to shut the main cabin door, go into FSPassengers, and end my flight. Flight was already registered. As we can see, it was a nice touchdown at negative 187 feet per minute descent. We flew to Atraubel International Airport from Houghton County Memorial. We made $9,650. Overall result of the flight was perfect. My company reputation did increase some. They expected it to be 94%, and it was only 88.6%. So that makes me happy. I also landed at the scheduled airport and made a very nice landing. So overall, it was another good flight. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and close that. Thanks again for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the flight. If you do want to see me to fly to any particular locations, definitely send me a message or a comment. Also, if you have any questions, comments, want to say hi or tell me that I suck or whatever, feel free to send me a comment or a message. I do try to respond to all of them. Also, if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe because I would appreciate that very much to get a few more subscribers. Also, be sure to come back next time as we will have a new aircraft. I'm not sure what it's going to be. I'm going to look at some of the Coronado aircraft and do a little bit of research before I purchase it, but hopefully you guys will like the one that I pick. So thanks again for watching, and we will see you all next time.